All right, now that we have everyone settled, I want to say hello. I'm Megan Perry. I am our Executive Director of Women's Initiatives at the Sports Innovation Lab. And I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to with the Sports Innovation Lab. You should see populating on your screen a quick slide. This is our Fan Project Live, which is a weekly series that we put on to really highlight change makers in the space that are working to not only just talk about change, but actually they are about it. And so I'm so excited to welcome Shelley Zalis, who is the founder and CEO of the Female Quotient. And before we get into learning a little bit more about Shelley and all the work that she's doing, I want to take a moment and tell you more about the Fan Project, if you don't know about it. The Sports Innovation Lab, we launched the Fan Project back on February 3rd around National Girls and Women in Sports Day. And it is dedicated to using the power of social media, fan social media data specifically, to compile a report that will help us all make the business case for why we should get more investment across the women's sports landscape, why women need more coverage. And we have a goal of doing this aggressively, 10% of all in sports coverage. We want to increase that in 10 months' time. And the Fan Project was designed and created to give fans, to give people that are, self-described sports fans, women's sports fans specifically, the opportunity to take action and help us drive change. So if you have not visited the Fan Project website, you can go to thefanproject.co, and there you can take action. We encourage you to share your social media data. It is all anonymized. Our analysts here at the Sports Innovation Lab will analyze it, stripped of all personal identifying information. We will then compile a report, and we're going to share it. We're going to share it with industry executives, with sponsors, with decision makers, business leaders, and influencers to give people the data to help them make data-based decisions that will help ultimately drive change across the women's sports landscape. So that's what we're about at the Fan Project, and we're so excited to have you jump on board. And if you haven't gotten involved, we encourage you to do so today. So with that, I want to take a moment and actually formally introduce our guest. If you do not know her, I want to introduce you to Shelley Zalis. She is the CEO of the Female Quotient, with an international thought leader and change maker and champion for equality. Simply put, I want you guys to know that Shelley is a force for women across the global landscape. A lot of people like to reference Shelley as the chief good troublemaker, if you will. But at the Female Quotient, Shelley is focused on driving visibility for women, for activating solutions for change, for creating metrics for accountability, and ultimately helping close the equality gaps that we all see and deal with every day. I'm going to brag on Shelley a little bit. As a research pioneer, she was the first female chief executive ranked in the research industry's top 25. She's done tireless work across Fortune 500 companies and impact organizations to drive equality through the Female Quotient's signature Equality Lounge. And she's been the recipient of numerous awards: the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, Global Marketing Leadership Award, the ARF Great Minds and Innovation Award, and the Matrix Award. So without further ado, I want to welcome Shelley Zalis to the stage. Shelley, come on up. Delighted to have you on the Fan Project Live.
I'm so excited to be here, and that was a lot of bragging that you just did. I would brag back about all the work that you are doing, because it is just so important for the visibility of women in sports and the business of sports. So the Fan Project, all the work that you're doing is really, remarkable.
I love that. Well, thank you. Likewise. So, I want to start the conversation with getting you to elaborate a little bit more on what you've been up to at the Female Quotient. So tell us a little bit more about the organization, and tell us about the organizations that work with you and how you're helping them.
Oh, thank you so much. So, the Female Quotient started by accident. We say we went from a moment to a movement. I had no idea that I would go from the business of market research to the business of equality, which we're in right now. I was the only female CEO, top 25 my entire career. I always thought, why am I always the exception to the rule? Why am I never right? Why am I the one not in charge? And if I'm always following the rules, I'm going to always be perpetuating status quo, which did not work for me, which is how I inherited the name Chief Troublemaker. So I like the good troublemaker. Thank you for adding that qualifier in. but I broke all the rules that made no sense and I created the new ones. And I think that's really what it's all about, is how do we flip the script, flip the equation, and start something new, because following legacy rules would not work for most of us to bring our whole selves, our true selves, and our best selves to the table. And so I'm a woman that has hacked the system with many of the rest of us so that we could write the rules that would allow us all to thrive. And so the Female Quotient was born when I had this idea to go to CES, a Consumer Electronics Show, put me in a market research conference. I know a lot of people. I've been in market research for over 35 years. 35 years, a really long time. I'm going to know someone and feel comfortable. Put me in technology. I didn't know anyone. And so what do? You have two options. Don't go for fear of failure and fear of being alone. Or do what I did, call a few girlfriends, say, let's go walk the floor together. And by the way, invite your girlfriends. And 24 hours later, 50 women showed up.
Wow. Wow.
Two remarkable things happened. One, every guy's head turned, like, where the heck did you all come from? And it's when we coined the phrase power of the pack. A woman living with power, collectively we have impact. The second was, I was surrounded by women just like me that had the same challenges, work-life balance, imposter syndrome, perfection issues, all of that. And we did more business in 3 days together amongst ourselves, our way. Sorry, not sorry. No permission needed. We granted it to ourselves. And that's how the Girls Lounge was born. And we decided, it was called originally the Girls Lounge to take on the Boys Club, the opposite of boy girl, the opposite of club lounge. If there's a boys club, now there's a Girls Lounge. And then that evolved into equality lounges, bringing conscious leadership to the table. And under the umbrella of the Female Quotient, when you add more women to any equation, there's a return on equality. And our partners are Fortune 500, organizations, but it's really about conscious leaders, because a company is an institution. It's about leadership that has intentionality and the power to activate change. Yeah. So we are a group of conscious leaders across Fortune 500 companies working together, power of the collective, to close the gender gaps. And that's how we were born and where we are going, which is further, faster, in accelerated pace, because we're all in it together.
Yeah, I love that. I love just how courageous and bold you were to kind of switch paths and to step into a new lane, and take the lead, quite honestly, in this space. So I want to get into a couple, I guess, sports-related questions that I have for you. We know that the sports industry really is like a microcosm of society. And sports, the world has a gender equality problem. Sports specifically, we know, has that problem. So talk to us a little bit about how the Female Quotient is working with sports organizations. What are they asking you about? What are they telling you they need? And how are you helping them close the gap?
Yeah, further, we do a lot in sports. We do a lot across every industry, because that's part of the equation. So women in finance, women in technology, women in marketing, media, advertising, world leaders, finance across the board. Sports is a really important one to us because, first of all, I think over 94% of leaders in Fortune 500 have played in a sport team in some way, professional or personal. And, sports is really where most of our role models and inspiration comes from, especially the power of team, the power of the collective, understanding that we all have a role to play, that we're all equal, we're all important. It's not about an I, it's about a we if you want to win the game. And win the game doesn't mean always scoring the most points. Winning the game is about being a real inclusive leader. And, we see that. So, one of the biggest problems is the lack of visibility of women in sports. And it's a chicken or egg. They are not getting the same pay equity because we don't have the same attendance. Well, we would have more attendance if we would feature more highlights of women. And when you look at highlight reels, less than 4% of highlight reels feature women. Yep. So, the work that you are doing to first shed the spotlight on the challenge, but more importantly, create the solutions, which are not that complicated. Let's show more visibility of women across the board in sports in our highlight reels, number one. Number two, women in the business of sports. And, and that's why I have a series with Steph McMahon called Women in the Business of Sports, the chief brand officer of WWE, who is the greatest champion, not only in WWE, my title belt, but also the greatest champion for equality. She has done so much. And so we do pop-ups, equality lounges at big sport functions, from the NBA All-Star. We're on our way to Cleveland for the NFL draft, to MLB, to golf, tennis, every sport across the board, having these conscious conversations of where we are and where we want to go. And when you just look at in social media, which is what you're all about with the NCAA, and the show and tell for results, I'm sorry, hello.
Yeah.
I have this gym that is like, the 5-star of gyms. And then you go to the ladies area and it's a little tiny rack of 5 weights.
Listen, Shelley, I wish I had you on like speed dial or something last weekend, and my husband would tell you, he's like, Megan, like, you need someone to talk to this about today, because I don't know if you know, I'm a former student athlete myself, and so I very much so I played college basketball, and very much so identify with what we all saw play out across social media, and it is infuriating, and that's why we are excited about the Fan Project, because there's a lot of excuses being made across the landscape, and you can't dispute hardcore data, right? You talk about numbers and research and like the importance of that. That's why the Fan Project is so significant, because for that scenario, when people say, well, why isn't, what's happening? Why don't they have a gym like the guys? And what's the problem? Yeah, the problem is investment, like a conscious decision to invest in women's sports. And why aren't they investing? Number of excuses, it runs long, but we're actually saying, okay, let's either shut up or put up. Here's the data. Here's where you can invest your money. We have proof. We have the social engagement history to show it.
There was no reason. It's like they had the space. It was crazy. It was this enormous auditorium with a little thing like this. And so, but the truth is data does tell all, because sometimes, we do hide behind excuses. And I always say equality is a choice, unconscious bias is an excuse. If you use the word unconscious, you're conscious.
Yes.
So data puts the spotlight on the problem. We now are making people aware, because I will give people the benefit of the doubt. First, let's make you aware. Once you're aware, you need the education of what to do, which is not hard, and then you need the action. And what was amazing in social media was one day we saw this little thing, hello, problem, and the next day we had a full gym, and it's because there's no excuse for this inequity. And so show and tell for results, and that's what data is all about, and that's what you are doing, which makes me so proud. If we show highlight reels and the percentage of time to women in sports, we show the gyms of the little rack versus what can be. It's imagining the possibilities and then doing it. It's not that complicated.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I'm fired up. You get me fired up. I know you're in the right place doing this work, because your passion is oozing out. So like, speaking of data, I have another question for you. The Fan Project is all about using data, of course, to prove the business case for women's sports. Talk about how data specifically helps the female quotient in your clients, advance and close this gender gap. How do you use it in a day-to-day basis to advance your business goals and objectives?
We use it for everything. So number one, I'm the co-founder of See Her. If you can see her, you can be her. So important in sports and role models in sports and the inspiration. And we created something called the GEM score, the Gender Equality Measure, as a researcher and testing content. Media defines culture. And when you look at media representation, it certainly does not reflect women in an accurate and realistic way, number one. I'm not even looking for positive portrayal. I'm looking for accurate and realistic portrayal, including the amount of time. So the GEM measures advertising and content, TV shows, and whatever it is, to say, here you are, just so that we can level set with data. Here's where you could go, and then we help how you can get there. So you can't treasure what you can't measure. So data is our measurement system to hold us accountable for change, number one. Number two, we just launched in partnership with Citi an advancing equality calculator, because when you look at the pay gap, we can all say, oh, life is, equal. It's not. I'm sorry, even equal pay day. Women in general, 82 cents on the dollar. Black women, 64 cents on the dollar. Latinas, 53 cents on the dollar. So, everyone can say we live in an equal world. I'm sorry. Here's the data. Is this equal? This is not equal pay for equal work. I'm sorry. And so the Advanced Equality Calculator, which we just launched, is a free tool that is all about being conscious of where you are. You can't fix something if you're not aware of the problem or if you're not intentionally, consciously wanting to be aware. We can hide behind everyone else's data, but until you hold yourself accountable, your company accountable, your choices accountable, then nothing will change. So it helps you see where your gap is and where you want to go, how you want to close it, what that delta is, and then we help you with those steps to get there. So there are no excuses.
Got it. Love that. I love that. I guess quick follow-up question to that is, what challenges do you face? Like once you show, let's say you're working with client A and they're not necessarily aware of how maybe large the gap is in their organization and some of the problems that exist, but what challenges do you have in helping communicate to them like that this is the problem, like kind of the come to Jesus moment, like, no, this is actually something that you need to focus on. Like what challenges have you faced and how, and where have you found success and using the data to communicate what that problem is?
Well, I think the data is just so incredibly important because it does show you where you're starting. But we also have all the data that shows when you do close these gaps, that diversity is not just a nice to have, it's actually good for business. And we have we have so much data up the wazoo that shows us why it's a business case as much as it shouldn't be, but we have all that data. So I think that is, incredibly important. I think I don't want to say it's a challenge. I think our opportunity is about focus. We can't do everything at the same time. It's about prioritizing. So once we point out where the inequities are, the question is, what do you want to do about it? And how are we going to move forward? Because most of the time we think about everything as one big problem. And if you think about it as one big problem, you back away from taking it on because you say, oh, it's not achievable, it's not possible, or at least in my lifetime. But if you take these big problems and put them into steps, steps, one step, you're going to look back one day and say, wow, look how far I've come. And it also takes reallocation. We spend so much money inside of organizations for policies and benefits that our employees might not even know about, might not even appreciate, might not value. And so if we actually put our money where our employees value the changes, then that will go a long way. So we got to get rid of the junk in the trunk and put the new stuff in and make some choices, which is back to intentionality.
Love that. I'm going to jump to a question because we have a couple questions floating out here, and I'm going to see if I can find it. I saw it pop up from Jack, I believe.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah, Jack wants to know, where have you seen the sports industry take the biggest strides forward lately with regards to equality in sports? Like what's working and what can be better? That's a great question.
Thank you for that. I think we're sharing more stories. Storytelling goes a long way. And, media defines culture. Culture creates change. And the change is what creates the possibilities for all of us to imagine the possibilities and then achieve them. We see so many more women in the business of sports, referees, on the field, off the field, in front of the camera, behind the camera. I think we also see a lot more using our voices for change and pointing out the things that need to evolve in a positive, proactive way. And so I just see a lot of the leagues with intentionality, really all not just talking about what they're going to do, but actually taking those steps and holding themselves accountable for the change. So I think the media representation matters. Storytelling goes a long way. Bringing visibility to these incredible role models in sports is helping all these young girls imagine the possibilities, showing that women are as badass athletes as men, is inspiring young girls to stay in sports, even when they are the minority in their schools or whatever. It's giving them that confidence. So we are really doing remarkable steps forward, transformation. And Jack, I want to say, I don't know your gender, but having not allies, activists having men and women supporting each other's sports also goes a long way, especially in social media, to activism and support, that we are all supporting one another for the changes that we want to see.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you need like 3 or 4 snaps to go alongside that, Shelley. Emily has a question as well. And thanks guys so much for your questions. I'm going to get to as many as I can. Emily wants to know, how do you also integrate and center equity with the mission of closing the pay gap, recognizing that Black and brown women face even more significant barriers to pay equity?
Listen, I just don't really know why there is even a disparity. I mean, I do think I know why, and it is so strange what I'm going to say, but it's legacy issues. And, you know, the men have been in the workplace, white men have been in the workplace a lot longer than women, and, you know, across gender, race, age, intersectionality, across the board. And so if they have been continuously climbing the ladder and getting salary increases and promotions, we're just coming in later in life, so we're behind.
Yeah.
So the only way we will close the gap is by shutting the door of inequity and opening the new one of equality, which is equal pay for equal work. So number one, Black, brown should make no difference. We need the best talent in the workplace, and we need to pay everyone the same. Now, what we need more of is more Black women and brown women in the workplace, because when you look at pay gap, it's, you know, the unadjusted and the adjusted. So when you just look at the raw pay gap, you will see, you know, where the inequity is from average salary. But we all know that women, and women of color in particular, have lower level salaries. So when you look at the average, it might look more equalized because we have less women of color at the top with the high paid jobs. So a few things: equal pay for equal work, shut the door of inequity and start the new one, because men in general are paid on potential, and, you know, women on performance. And so that's going to always become the issue, because we're starting behind, number one. Number two, we need to not only fill the pipeline with more women of color, but we need to create the pathway to leadership, because women fall off before they get to leadership for so many other reasons. So that is how we are going to need to close the gap, is not only from a salary equalizer, but also from a pipeline potential. In and helping them go up.
God, love that. Emily, thanks for your question. I have a question for you, Shelley. I have 2 more, because I know I'm going to make sure we're ending on time today. So my question for you is, talk about who has inspired the passion and the fire and the spiciness that we have all gotten a chance to experience from you today. Like, with the fan project early on, when we launched this, we asked people to share their "she did that" moment, meaning share a moment in which there was a female athlete, maybe there was an influencer or business leader where you went, wow, like, she did that, right? Meaning you were inspired by what it is that was on display from her. So what is your "she did that" moment?
I mean, listen, I have so many "she did that" moments, which keep me going every single day. And, you know, I always say, when purpose meets passion, you're unstoppable. I think it makes us unstoppable. And I think all of us, you know, when you have an impact, purpose-driven mission, and you know that your input and the collective genius of all of us is driving the changes, you know, forward, you say, wow, being able to leave a legacy while I'm alive, and, you know, sharing the baton, not passing it down and waiting for that next generation, but inspiring all of us to bring our best selves. 2 great stories. One, my title belt, and this is Steph McMahon. So amazing. Women wrestlers had little skinny belts with butterflies, and, you know, why were they different than the men title belts? And so men and women now have the same title belt. They're heavy, they're big. I think they were made by men for men, because they push you up like that.
Yeah, it's like, what is yeah.
They aren't anatomically amazing, but they are powerful, and I am so proud to have that. And so, you know, it takes courage. And she made that conscious decision that men and women should have the same title belt, rightfully so. It happens. Another, and you talked about the Matrix Award, that I received, a communication award, very phenomenal, important award. I mentor a lot of girls in Rwanda, and I always say a moment of mentorship can lead to a lifetime of impact. I went to Rwanda for the World Economic Forum in Africa, and while I was there, I went to visit these schools of girls. So it was amazing, and I met these incredible girls that all, we talked about confidence and the importance of confidence and speaking up and speaking out and the power of speaking together, and how being a woman is, Sarah Jessica Parker, trying to be a man is a waste of a woman, how their powers are so important and their differences are their greatest strength. And at the World Economic Forum, I had 10 girls come sitting at different tables, and I told them to, when I say confidence, stand up and say confidence is beautiful. Instead, a little girl named Esther stood up and turned to 500 women in the room, power women, and said, ladies, tell me where your confidence came from. And throughout the day, Esther, let me tell you, Esther, let me tell you. A young woman named Amen, she was 13 years old at the time, got up and ended the conference and turned to all these women and said, I want you all to know you made me realize how important my voice was. And not only is it not that it's as important as the boys, but probably more important, and that it's my responsibility to pay it forward to all the girls in the school. I had her give me the Matrix Award. I flew her from Rwanda. She's never been on a plane. No one in her family has ever traveled anywhere. She said that in an escalator, it felt like her feet were being swallowed, and on the airplane, it felt like her head was in the clouds. And it was a room filled with 1,000 women. She got up and spoke to 1,000 women in a teleprompter with her voice, that I'm sitting on the desk, I'm sobbing, and I had to accept the award. And the speech I wrote throughout, I come up to receive it, and she looks at me and she says, do you need me to stand with you and hold your hand so you're not afraid? And I have to tell you, to me, that is not our next generation. That is our now generation of leaders. And these are about girls finding their voice and allowing it to shine. And that's what it is all about.
Oh my goodness. That's a heck of a she did that moment. And I'm like going to nominate that for the best one. So Shelley, thank you for sharing that. I don't think we have time for more questions, but I do want to say this. I want to say, or I want to ask you one more thing. Tell us what the Female Quotient is working on next. What should we be looking out for, and where can we follow all the work that you and your team are doing?
Thank you. Everything and anything that is possible. We are doing a lot of in real life meets in virtual life now. And so, the virtual was a pivot or for us. It will now be a new and, because it provides access to people all over the world that might not have had that opportunity before. So stay tuned. We hopefully will be hosting the largest global conference for women all over the globe. We'll do a lot with Title IX. Of course, we'll do a lot in sports moving forward. We host dinner parties all over the globe virtually, uniting the world through the power of women in over 100 countries. So you can find us at Female Quotient, at Shelley Zalis. You can follow us. You are welcome to any of our sessions. It's free for everybody to participate. And this is how we make the world more equitable, as long as we do it together and share the good, bad, and the ugly, but work together on moving forward instead of in silos, which makes us go backwards.
Perfect. Well, Shelley, thank you so much. I want to say thanks for sharing your time with us. We're so excited that we had the opportunity to talk with you on the FAM Project Live. And we want to encourage everyone, if you're not fired up, then I don't know how to get you fired up. But if you want to take action, if you want to help support and drive change, investment across the women's sports landscape, check out the FAMproject.co. Check out all the work that the Female Quotient is doing. And we just look forward to continuing this conversation and creating change together. So thanks again for your time, Shelley.
Well, thank you, Megan, for all you do, and love to Angela as well. Because thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
I'm your greatest fan.